right, let's talk about some of the wrestling from last week on television, right? We'll go in chronological order. Last Wednesday night's Dynamite, because Wednesday comes before Friday, right?
Not in Australia or Japan.
Well, that's only if you're flying backwards.
This is what Hulk Hogan told me. I don't know.
Well, anyway, speaking of flying backwards, we're in Dayton for this episode of... Dayton is 50 miles from Cincinnati, so it's close enough to be Johnny Scissorhands' hometown.
Johnny Scissorhands?
Johnny Scissorhands, old John Moxley. He makes his entrance through the crowd, not only with he was with Wheeler Useless, who wasn't even announced, but he's also, maybe they're mad at him too, but he's also accompanied by his father, who didn't play any part in the match and was never seen again, but I guess he thought it would be cool to have his dad walk him down the fucking general admission aisle.
Almost close to home.
He's the father of a plumber, baby. The father of a plumber. So they start out with the long-awaited babyface versus babyface scientific confrontation between Plumber Moxley and Hangnail Page. I know Moxley has his appeal, and I every week kind of try to see it. And it's almost a rib at this point. So we thought, well, is Moxley the one that's trying to turn heel on Page because he was being such a dick? But then Page was kind of a dick too, but that's kind of him naturally. So we weren't sure. Well, now since they're almost in Moxley's hometown, the people are cheering predominantly for Moxley to kill Adam Page, which it looks like he's trying to do from the first moment of the match. And this makes me, again, think back to all the great promoters, including Vince Sr., who said, I don't want to have Bruno versus Andre because the fans are going to have to boo one of them. The fans are going to pick which one they like. He didn't want to have Bruno and Pedro. And Page does not need any help getting people to dislike him, and the wrestling fans at least, but nevertheless. So the match. Moxley jumps him in the aisle, bashes his head into the stairs, runs him into the railing, chokes him with his ring jacket, throws him over the rail into the crowd, kicks the shit out of him in the arena, and puts a figure 4 on him on the concrete floor. What a fucking scientific match we've got going on here. And then they came back to ringside where Moxley hit Page with a chair and was going to try to Pillmanize his leg. Again, I've talked about this where, yes, guys can get mad at each other and want to fight. But what has either one of these guys done to the other one besides knock each other out that you want to cripple them, break their leg, fucking put them out of... That is a heel's position to want to end a guy's career. It's not if Moxley's trying to say that he's the fucking tough guy that wants to fight, that means he's also an asshole and a criminal and he'll fuck people up for good just because they beat him once? Or does that mean that he's the fucking guy that wants to win a one-on-one man against man fight with his bare hands because he's tougher, like a kick-ass babyface? I don't know what the fuck they're just doing shit to each other with no thought that anybody might think it's real, because they know that the way they're doing it, nobody will. But anyway, so when Hangnail grabs the chair that Moxley was going to use to break his leg and flings it and hits Moxley in the head with it, and then suplexes him on the floor on top of the chair and rolls him in the ring. And Moxley is staggering over to the far corner while Page is trying to bring the chair in, and the referee's trying to tell Page, don't do that. And then, Brian, you know where I'm going with this, because this was not something that I saw as a trained observer. This was something that people were fucking clipping and putting up on Twitter and making fun of before I ever even watched this fucking program. Moxley sits down in the ring in the corner with his back to the turnbuckles, and the camera gets a close-up of him pulling his blade out of his mouth, gigging himself over the right side of his eyebrow, and then putting the blade underneath the apron skirt, dropping it down underneath the ring. Now, I know what he was trying to do, because you're going to say, well, who'd hit him in the head? Well, nobody. He got hit in the head with a chair like 45 seconds before that. But as he comes out of the corner, then Paige clocks him with a big forearm to the side of the head, and that's supposed to be what busted him open. He was just doing a preemptive gig, but he didn't bother. Not only did he not bother to in any way cover up or disguise what he was doing, he just thought that in a building with 5,000 people in it, that nobody would be looking at him sitting in the middle of a ring lit for television, cutting his own head with a razor blade. But at that exact moment, the director thought it'd be a great idea to go to a close-up of Moxley. And by the way, right after that, then the bell rang to start the match. 7 minutes into this fucking arena brawl that they got going on. Did you see this the first time, or were you paying close enough attention that you even gave a shit? But I'm sure you heard about it on Twitter.
I did not see it the first time because I was watching it, but I wasn't paying too close of attention. They were brawling around for a long time. I'm not a big fan of the two, and I was looking forward to this episode. I ended up not liking this episode, and this match got it started on the wrong foot in my eyes.
Got you started going downhill or uphill or whichever one's bad.
There's a hill, and I don't like it.
So after they have bashed each other with furniture, fought all over the arena, they get in the ring, the bell rings, start the match, and they start wrestling. And Moxley tries and fails to put an Indian deathlock on Paige. He started it and couldn't figure it out and just had his leg in between Paige's legs and just put his other foot over on Paige's knee and pushed. Then Paige started getting heat on Moxley, and now Moxley, because he's close to his hometown, he's selling like a babyface. And it's the first time I've actually seen him try to sell anything. But basically, they teased a spot on the apron forever, and then Paige Fireman's carried Moxley up on his shoulders and just tossed him like a sack of fucking wheat into the ring post, and that's the break spot. So they come back, other side of the break. Paige gives some kind of fucked up thing to Moxley off the top rope. And Moxley starts his comeback with a double bird and a cutter. I'll get to it in the end. He's not done with his birds or for the lip readers in the audience. But then, honestly, if you just showed me the 30 or 40 seconds of the next thing they did, the forearm and chop exchange, I would have said, well, this looks like a really good match. Because they actually did a nice exchange with body language and not standing there and going, come on, hit me, and blah, blah, blah. They exchanged with the selling and the registering and the laying the forearms in. Okay. I guess that's the blind squirrel principle. But immediately after that, Paige belly to back suplexes Moxley, and Moxley, he drops him right on his head, and Moxley gets right up without selling it and gives Paige one. And he sold it. And the announcers even had, well, Moxley rolled through with that. No, he didn't. He looked exactly the same as the one he gave Paige. He just didn't bother to sell it. And then Moxley gives Paige a front face-lock superplex off the top rope for a 2 count. And then Moxley gets the choke and the pissy stomps and the cross arm breaker, and Paige gets the ropes. They're trying to have a classic. And they're doing a lot of good moves that get pops, but the problem is neither one of them can put a fucking logical match together. Hence, reason why they had the best part of it 7 minutes before the bell rang. They're going backwards. And then I was gratified by one thing. When Page backdropped Moxley over the top rope and went for his moonsault off the top to the floor, Moxley moved. And Page actually missed since he didn't bother to look at the guy that he was flipping on like he never does for the previous 30 or 40 seconds. Was this a no DQ match or just lazy booking?
I don't know.
Did they? Because, I mean, it's all the same in AEW. Moxley tries to powerbomb Page through a table, but Page turns around, does it to him. Moxley beats the 10 count. That's why, is it no DQ or no count out or just AEW because they've been on the floor, they've been out, they've used the furniture, blah, blah, blah. Finally, Moxley foiled the buckshot. Page came out with a tombstone pile driver and hits Moxley with it and doesn't even try to cover him. Rolls out and goes for a buckshot lariat. Good thing he didn't cover him because Moxley was on his feet standing up by the time that Page could roll to the apron and do the buckshot. And Page hit that. 2 count. So within 15 seconds of each other, a tombstone pile driver and the fucking guy's finished. 2 count. And then Page gets the fucking choke on him, the bulldog choke. And the announcers are saying the heart and guts of Moxley on display here. How about the egotism and outlaw wrestling mind? Because now here, this guy's been tombstoned. He's been buckshotted. He's already bleeding. He's being choked out. And suddenly, Moxley just rolls out of the choke and pins Page 1, 2, 3. Just like that. And the announcer, he got I think Taz said he stacked him up. What the he got tombstoned. He got buckshotted. He's already been bleeding. He's had the shit kicked out of him. He's being choked out. And he just flying mared the guy over forwards and pinned him 1, 2, 3. And then Page and Moxley start shoving at each other and arguing at each other. And here's Claudio and Useless, and they get in between. And right before we don't have to see any more of this horse shit, Moxley manages to get another double bird on camera and a close-up of him mouthing the words, "Fuck you," for all you lip readers out there. So he continues to be a detriment to their fucking continued good relations with their network and the world's champion garbage wrestler. You can count on him to, in any situation, bleed and cuss and be a problem. Your thoughts, Brian?
I wasn't a big fan of the match. I wasn't a big fan of this episode. Moxley's gotten the word fuck on TV more than anyone else. He mouths it. He gives the fucking double bird, like you said. He's blading on camera. Gets his wife hired. I mean, no one has gotten more from AEW, and yet this is what you get. I mean, this is the best of what you get right here. And I think, you kind of hit on my big thing on Moxley. I could kind of understand why some people like him. I just can't understand how they do based on his matches or his personality or anything he does in a wrestling ring.
Maybe it's his plumbing. He does great plumbing work.
I thought he was going to celebrate with his dad and point, look at all these fans, look at what your son has done. No, we just see some guy come to the ring with him. It's his dad and him and Wheeler on one side and the security fleet on the other side to make sure no one gets near them. Every
member of security looks like a bigger badass than Jon Moxley, who, again, looks like an emaciated fucking homeless meth addict that's been living under a fucking trailer somewhere. All righty then. They did a package on Darby and Joe. Joe sounds great. Again, was reminded why Darby Allen doesn't speak very much. But then here comes the Acclaimed. And I'm going to, again, AEW has had a string of shows over the last few weeks. The Jay Briscoe tribute, Mark Briscoe and Jay Lethal, great match. They've had a couple of decent ratings in a row, and I'm not knocking the Acclaimed here, but they're determined to shoot these kids in the foot. So they do their entrance, the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn. Caster does the rap two guys in the ring. Nobody said their names. They got no graphic, and they looked badly like two indie guys that were, honestly, that Dennis Coralluzzo fucking booked in 1993, and they got lost and never found the building. And the fans were chanting, "Scissor me daddy," because they love the Acclaimed. The jobbers ridiculously overacted and then milked scissoring each other and acted even more foolish when they did it. And then, because they scissored each other, apparently that was supposed to make the Acclaimed mad, so Bowens goes over. And did you see this, bro? The super kick bump?
Yeah, I watched.
Bowens super kicks one of the job guys, and he staggered backwards and leaned into the top rope, and his intention was to be super kicked backwards over the top rope. But because he was the shits, he just leaned back into the ropes, and then once he was on the rope, he obviously, visually, on purpose, kicked his feet up near, baby, and flipped backwards over the top rope on purpose. And then they double-teamed the other clown, and then Billy Gunn got in the middle of the ring, and they all scissored, or they scissored with the Acclaimed right in the middle of the match, and then Caster went up and dropped the elbow off the top rope, 1, 2, 3, and that was the match. And I know I'm saying...
Are they trying to sabotage the tag team division? Because we went from, if you're a fan of the Bucks, you're getting a high-quality Bucks matches when they were the tag champs. So you're fans of the kind of wrestling that FTR did when they were champs, you got that kind. You've had various kinds of tag teams, and right now, the Acclaimed are becoming more of a WWE-style tag team than an AEW tag team traditionally, more about skits than anything in the ring. And then this feud with the Guns, and I like the Guns, but I don't know, this feud with the Guns has kind of been awful. All sorts of awful, really.
Well, and again, so they have the...
It fit in on Raw, though.
Yes, it would. And I say that the Acclaimed should, or I say that anybody, young guys, should get squash wins on TV and get wins to rack up their record, but not in 30 seconds after the one job guy's so bad he exposed the business before the bell rang. But this was, if you're not going to give it any time to be taken seriously, they don't need a match if it's just 30 seconds of wising off. But then that's when the Gun Boys come to the ring, because apparently they were running long too, so they need to get out there. And they want a title match. And the Gun Boys have shown that having some energy and emotion in the verbal part of their game, their promos, is apparently what they're struggling with. But then there was one line and not very convincing. They won a title match, but then Bowens fires up good, and as good as Caster is with the raps, Bowens is with the promo. And of course, he asked fans, do they deserve a title shot? And fans said, no. So they shove and bicker, and Billy Gunn then says, hey, I've had enough. Go ahead and beat the shit out of each other. And he starts to walk out. And then one of the sons tells him, yeah, go do what you used to do when we were kids. Drown your sorrows in the bottom of a pill bottle. Well, for one thing, you can't drown in the bottom of a pill bottle. It's too big. You've mixed your metaphors. It's drown your sorrows in the bottom of a whiskey bottle. But nevertheless, that makes Billy mad. He turns around, comes back, and he tries to give him the match, but the original microphone he had, same problem he had a couple weeks ago. It was feeding program, but not the house, so he had to throw that away and get another one, and did better at covering it than Moxley did, and gives them the match next week, which confuses the Acclaimed. Now, hopefully, they are not stupid enough to fuck with the Acclaimed being with Billy, because the Acclaimed are getting a whole lot more out of Billy, and Billy's getting a whole lot more out of the Acclaimed than Billy would if he was with his own sons and they were a heel team. And the sons can be fine without Billy. But I smell a rat here. What do you think, Brian?
I'm not like any of the booking with the Acclaim for a while. They got themselves really over, and it feels like there's a mission to get them under. again, they're not feuding with another top team. The tag team division has kind of disappeared. And everything they've done with the Guns has not been anything that you could take seriously. The family mediation with the fake therapist. And then this stuff. It's making them look bad. And I don't think it's, I worry about, AEW has a track record of doing a bad job of managing people that are over. The Acclaimed were one of the exceptions because they got themselves over. Let's see how they manage it now, because it's not looking good. To me. I guess there are fans that like that style of angle and comedy.
Well, for the kind of people that like that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing those people like. But and remember when Wardlow got himself over and went right into a feud with a fake lawyer and 25 security guards? All righty then, the next match, our boy Take. You couldn't say it either.
Takeshita.
I've had some nice things to say about him. That will now come to an end because now somebody did. They sent me the clip out. He had a match with Riho.
Was it actually with Riho?
Riho. Yes, it was.
It's like I told you, every single person in the business now does stupid stuff before they get onto the main stage. It's sad.
Well, so anyway, I'll acknowledge that he's the best one that they've found from the Japanese outlaw garbage wrestling scene, but I can't honestly pull for him and get behind him now because he's same as the fucking rest of them. It was bad embarrassing too, because it was one of the ones where they don't even try to make it plausible like they do here in this country. They just
show us you could do the moves. Yeah.
They just work like they're same size and even and everything's okay.
Is it recent?
Anyway. Huh?
Is it recent?
I don't know. I mean, how it has to be. What can this guy be? 25 years old? He was a grown person when he was doing it. So within the last 5 years.
Well, how old's Rio? She's got like 30 years in the business now.
Well, she
started at the age of like 2.
She could have been an embryo. She's the same size she is now. She went on a diet. She wanted to lose 5 pounds, so she did from 99 to 94, and now she's looking to get down to her original weight, 6 pounds, 3 ounces. Anyway, I did write, I watched this before I had seen the Take Rio match. I said, he looks great. Will he finally win a match? Because they've beaten him in every instant, but I thought, okay, it's Cage, who means nothing, so this is a chance to get Takeover. Question is, will Cage have such a shitty match with him that it hurts old Take to beat a guy like that? He was shining at the start, and then Cage just picked him up and buckle bombed him into the ring post and started the heat within about a minute. But then within 30 seconds or so, old Take was coming back and hit a blue thunder bomb for a 2 count, but then missed a knee and took a nice bump over the top. But then he jumped right back up so that Cage could suplex him outside in and not cover him. So I realized there's going to be no heat spot, no cutoff, no set of heat, no specific comeback because Cage is evidently leading this and none of his shit makes any sense. So they did moves to each other. When they came back from the break, Take hits a missile drop kick for the first move of his comeback, and both of them sell that. He never covered the guy then. Then Cage gives old Take a head palm shoot off. I swear to God. He grabs this grown adult man that is taller than he is, does Brian Cage, with his right hand by the back of the guy's head. Actually, grab is too strong a word. He puts his hand on the back of the guy's head and just goes whoosh and flings him apparently into the ropes. But when he does that, Cage, he staggers around 360 degrees in a circle because that effort took so much out of him, where he waved his arm and a 200-something pound man flew away, that he turns in a circle, and when Take a Shit comes off the ropes, he just clotheslines Cage, who turned in a circle for no fucking reason in the middle of the ring. Jump down, turn around, pick a bale of cotton. So when I saw that, I said, fuck it, I'm skipping to the finish, because this is garbage. Apparently, they did a number of big moves, and then Take a Shit gave him a superplex and a knee lift, 1, 2, 3. But again, I'm embarrassed every time you say, boy, if somebody could just take a picture of Brian Cage standing there, he looks incredible. Don't let him move. Don't let him breathe. What do you think, Brian?
Why is he all over the show again?
Well, because they've cycled out shitty wrestlers and cycled in some more shitty wrestlers.
Wasn't crazy about this match. If you've seen one Brian Cage match, you've seen them all. Takeshita has a lot of potential, but he's working with Brian Cage here, and I don't think I didn't care about it, and I'm not sure how much the viewers did either.
What happened to Hobbs?
He has a book now, and he's been telling a story on random shows that you have to find. Because it was on Dynamite. It was on Dynamite for a few weeks in a row.
He's become a booker?
He was on Dynamite for a few weeks in a row, and now he hasn't been on Dynamite. I don't know if he's on Rampage.
All right. So Renee Moxley Good was in the back with Jericho and his stooges, and so this is they've challenged Ricky Starks. Starks wants Jericho, and to get Jericho, he has to run the Garcia Guevara Gauntlet, which basically means he's got to beat each member of the Jericho Appreciators one at a time to get to Jericho. Not only have they done this before, but is this not what they're actually doing right fucking now with Bryan Danielson?
They've done this multiple times with every MJF feud, pretty much. They've done this with other guys, and now they're doing it here. And remember what we just said on the other show. Action Andretti or Starks, whoever it is, they're feuding with Jericho. These other 5 guys are there just so they can lose on the route to Jericho. It's ridiculous. Because none of them are feuding with anyone. None of them are doing anything. Bad booking.
Well, now you mentioned I mentioned that they've cycled out some shitty wrestlers. They were only on pre-tape here on this program. We had Olivier and the Buckaroos and Don Fallis and Michael Knock It to fuck off in a pre-tape on the basketball court somewhere in the building, I guess. And within a few seconds, in walks Matt Hardy and Stokely and the other Page and Cassidy, and the challenge is made for a 6-man tag team match Friday on Rampage. Thankfully, we don't have to watch that. But nobody, again, was serious here in any way. They weren't funny. They weren't doing funny comedy. They were just jacking off so you could tell it wasn't important, and they weren't serious about it. So isn't that kind of like even worse than being funny and actually being funny about wanting to fight, but at least it's funny? When it's not funny, you're just being jack-offs and everybody knows it's phony?
The Bucks can't do serious. They can only do their brand of bad humor, and it's not good. It's never good. The promos are always terrible, and it's always bad humor.
It's just the verbal part of this was like if this was a run-through and they were just blocking it out for the light and the camera angle, and they'd just say whatever. So anyway, and then we broke our string of misery. And potentially, well, my second favorite thing that I saw out of both programs, Wednesday and Friday, and my first favorite match, only favorite match, was Bryan Danielson and Timothy Thatcher. And again, at least they're learning, because what did we see at 9 o'clock Eastern, top of the hour? Bryan Danielson making his entrance, the biggest star on this particular 2-hour program. So that might hook somebody. And obviously the story again is Thatcher's another one of the guys that MJF is trying to get to beat and hurt and put out of commission Bryan Danielson before the pay-per-view match where he challenges MJF for the title. But again, from the bell on this one, the professionalism of the work, the approach, the presentation was 10 levels above anything else so far on the program. Both these guys know what they're doing. They've had the wrestling, they had the striking, they had the little things, the timing and the pace. It was an athletic contest. Thatcher is a heel. but he's a wrestling heel where it's not like the Sheik. He's pulling a fucking knife out of his trunks, or he's carving somebody up, or he's hitting you over the head with a chair, or he's drinking your bones or eating your blood. He's an old-fashioned wrestling heel where he has the talent, but you can tell he's also a salty old prick. And I love the way he looks older than he has to look older than he is. He can't chronologically be as old as he looks, and that's refreshing. He looks like Dory Funk Jr. if Dory had great facials. The old-time wrestler's body, no knee pads, the way he works, the tightness of his holes and the way he goes in and out of them. And, again, this was a wrestling match, and they didn't have fucking furniture, and they didn't have goddamn, the out in the crowd and the goddamn multiple run-ins and all this fucking tomfoolishness. It was an athletic contest and a wrestling match that built, and you could get into it. And Thatcher's the heel and Danielson's a babyface. We want to see him succeed. Thatcher goes for the double arm. Danielson fights out. Thatcher back up for the regular suplex. Danielson fights out. Danielson hits the missile drop kick, but sells the shoulder that Thatcher's been working on when he lands. They traded the European uppercuts, which, again, Thatcher reminds me of Dory. Was Dory the first one doing those? Because was it the influence of guys like maybe Ted Heath or John Foley, those guys that worked from England, that worked Texas in the 60s when Dory was breaking in?
I don't know, but I've actually always hated them.
Really?
I've never ever liked them. I always thought they looked like crap when Dory Funk Jr. did them. I've never liked anyone else doing them.
Billy Robinson's looked
the best, probably, now that I'm thinking about it.
They may not have felt the best. I always thought I was impressed by them because it looked like a fucking shoot, and you could hear it.
If you watch wrestling with someone who's not a wrestling fan and someone does that, they can't understand what just happened because they just watched it. It doesn't make sense. I think it's one of the worst things that people do in their matches. Well, I can see that, but if think about this, Terry Funk threw one of the best punches in the wrestling business. Dory never threw a punch, really. Dory always hit because that was something that those technical heels would do because it was a legal blow in wrestling rather than a closed fist, but also because it came up out of nowhere. It was kind of a dirty thing subliminally to the people. I don't know. But anyway, they did them well here. It's better than the goddamn little flipper forearms that you see from all these guys now where they just throw it to the side of your neck. And in the contest at the opening between Johnny Scissorhands and Hangnail, they laid those in where you could hear them a little bit, but most of the time those guys are just pissy. Anyway, they had some wrestling exchanges. They squashed the referee in the corner, and here's the one thing I didn't like, and you tell me what you think. They're having this match where they're going back and forth, and they're getting some 2 counts. And then Danielson gets the sleeper, and they squash the referee in the corner. And the ref is down, and here comes MJF down the ramp, putting the ring on. This is going to be easy. And suddenly, in a hoodie, comes Takeshita and tackles him down on the floor and just fights him back down the entryway, and they're gone. And then they're still having the match. And Thatcher gets a Fujiwara armbar, and Danielson gets the rope break. But now the fans are flat and the referee's back up. So I know in Tony's Adderall prescription, it says, I've got to involve MJF some kind of way because that's the story. And I want to push old Take, and he's kind of taken up for MJF last week, or not MJF, but Danielson last week. So I'll continue that. But what he did, it was an unnecessary distraction from the match. At that point, just to bump the referee, just to do that spot, neither one of them ever got in the ring, but it took all the fans in the arena's attention and a lot of the TV viewers' attention to that and down the aisleway. And then
they were having a great match and they were building some shit, but now they got to fucking, in effect, start from scratch. Thatcher has the armbar and Danielson gets a rope break, but they could have obviously going from, oh my God, chaos on the floor to a submission hold. The movement is lessened. They distracted there. And then Danielson's immediately going home. He hits a German suplex and the big bukkake knee and gets the 1, 2, 3. And yes, the people pop because they wanted to see him win, but it was an unnecessary distraction right at the fucking finish. And I don't see why. Well, hold on, and I'll let you say that. I don't see why they couldn't have finished their match like they did, but have Danielson still selling the effects of what he'd been through long enough for MJF to come down and do the same thing and take a shit to fucking tackle him, and off they go because of what was going to happen next. Now, go ahead.
You know, the other interesting thing about all of this, if you stop and think about it, how many ref bumps have there ever been in AEW?
Well, you know what?
They never do.
I don't remember one.
They never do them. Never.
So they pick, of all times, they pick this to do that instead of something meaningful to happen.
Does it feel to you like the MJF Danielson feud is off somehow? I mean, I know you're not a fan of him. I actually like him so far, but they're cramming Takeshita into the middle of this thing. Danielson's doing what every MJF opponent does and going through the gauntlet of people that he finds.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just feels like it should just kind of be, I hate you, you hate me, let's do promos week after week, as opposed to everything else. It just feels like the feud doesn't mean as much today as it did a few weeks ago. To me, what do you think?
Well, after what I saw next, nothing means as much. The food doesn't taste as good. The sunlight isn't as bright. Because now MJF, the one guy that ought to be protected, they're in the back of the arena, him and Take. And they're having the big fight, and then a bunch of people run in and pull them apart, and there's 14 people pulling them apart, and they're yelling and screaming, and suddenly here comes Renee Moxley Good in the middle, literally in the middle of all of them, in the middle of the two pulled apart bunches, with a microphone, and everybody, she gets their attention by saying, listen up, and everybody stops to listen, and she says, per Tony Khan, next week, it's going to be MJF versus Take a Shit. But I'm not, again, against the match, but the way it was done was so visually and obviously phony. And then everybody starts yelling again after they listen to her.
I think they aired that early. I think that pre-tape aired earlier than it was supposed to.
I don't know what to tell you.
Are they jamming Renee Moxley Good into every segment? It feels like now they're trying to justify her contract. Because she's talking more than any other, than Dasha, than Shivani. Shivani doesn't say anything. He hands the mic over and walks away. Then the other one whose name I'm forgetting right now. None of them really say anything. They just hold the mic.
Officer Bar Brady.
Officer Bar Brady was the worst.
She'd be a welcome replacement for Bar Brady. But yes, because... Again,
she's not Mean Gene. I think that's the one thing a lot of people have to understand. She's not Mean Gene. Fans don't like her the way they like Mean Gene. Stop pretending she's a bigger personality than she is.
That's the thing. She did, a real promotion interview fucking show for a while. And so they think that she's Mike Wallace. But anyway, it was a phony presentation of this, that all these people, this massive fight, and suddenly they're being pulled apart and they're going to stop and listen to the proclamation of, the plumber's wife. And anyway, I'm sure MJF obviously will beat old Take next week. But again, it's muddling the water somewhat. And then the next thing you saw after the break was MJF, and he seemed to have gotten himself together.
Yeah, this is the one I meant. They played this one when they weren't supposed to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Well, either case, either this one was later, the other one was early, because that's the thing. Now MJF comes in the back like after a commercial break, and his hair's combed, and he doesn't seem to be flustered in any way, besides the fact that he's trying to motivate Rush. by giving him a briefcase full of cash to fuck up Danielson next week. And he says there's 5 more of these where that came from. So for once, there's a heel doing heel things, but it was right after he just had a pull apart with the fucking rising star while he's the world champion about to face the... Okay, we're getting complicated. Yeah. Yes, we are.
Rush does Andrade better than Andrade ever did. Hey, let me ask you this. What do you do with Thatcher? Do you bring him back? Do you sign him? Is this someone that you think you should have on the roster?
I can't imagine why they wouldn't sign this guy with all these other indie-rific fucking sensations. This is from the company that once had Marco Stunt under contract. If they've got a chance to give Timothy Thatcher a job, I would suggest highly they do it. He might be able to teach some other people something around there. Anyway, speaking of teaching people things, the next match was Red Velvet versus Jane Cargill. And you know what they taught me how to do? Get up and take a piss.
Any of the women's segments that you're going to take a break during, I wouldn't do it during the Jade Cargill segments. She's the one I wouldn't skip.
Well, this show was on my last nerve already. It didn't take a lot of their gravy to go all over my plate this week. But what did I miss here? Besides Jane's 50th win.
You missed a fine match, and Jade is feuding with the former baddies.
Yeah.
And Red Velvet lost, and
Oh, so well now are the baddies baby faces, or is Jane a baby face now?
No, I think she owns the trademark, the baddies, so they don't call themselves baddies anymore. Now they're the artists formerly known as baddies.
Are they Rottens?
They're the Rottens.
But I'm asking, but which side are we supposed to be on? We supposed to be on the former baddies because they got tired of being treated as flunkies, or are we supposed to be on Jane's because they stabbed her in the back?
I think Red Velvet and Kiera Hogan are supposed to be the baby faces because Jade acts like Jade and she's a heel. But then after Jade won, she brought her daughter in the ring, and who celebrates with their kids but a baby face?
Well, that's why I was asking you that question, because she wins her 50th. She's the only person in AEW, male or female, that's undefeated. Tony decided he's going to do an undefeated streak, and he did it with the fucking Jane Cargill. Can you imagine if a top name that might be in the main event of a fucking pay-per-view, but nevertheless, the heel brings her cute little daughter in the ring to celebrate her victory. So she's the best mother heel we've ever... I don't know what the fuck's going on here.
Hey, so how many wins does she need before she gets an AEW title match?
Well, here's what I'm going to ask. I can't wait to see whether or not she gets job face. Whenever the time eventually comes, as it has to for all of us.
I think it depends on who. If they say you're losing to Riho, you're going to get boo-boo job face.
Oh, I'd love to see that. But hey, Twinkle Toes supposed to be in charge of the women's division. I'm sure that the fans are clamoring for Riho and Jane. And speaking of the women's division, Britt Baker and Ruby Soho and somebody else were in the back.
Jamie Hayter.
Yeah, well, okay, there you well. I just said somebody because I wasn't paying attention because they were referring to something that I skipped earlier in the program. Because can you tell, besides Thatcher and Danielson, this show has gotten on my last fucking nerve.
Again, I'm going to say, because I've been complimenting them for several weeks, for maybe 2 months I've said I enjoyed the program, by and large, I hated this week's episode. Even with the Danielson match, I didn't like this episode at all.
Well, and be careful what you wish for, because sometimes you get it. I said, oh my God, Samoa Joe, push Samoa Joe. Since I was with Samoa Joe in TNA, I was a fan of his. I thought that, besides the fact that he and Angle actually produced business numbers for TNA, I loved his work, and he was either diminished or not cast aside, but he was diminished or whatever because of the hierarchy there where all the ex-WWE guys that came down for a paid vacation needed to take precedent. And I always enjoyed his work in Ring of Honor, except I was afraid at one point, remember I said this years ago, that if Ring of Honor had got Joe after the way that Joe had been used most recently, I don't know whether it'd be great because of the booking that they had fucking just, but anyway, I've been screaming for 15 years for somebody to book Samoa Joe on top. And now here, at least he had the TNT title and he has the Ring of Honor TV title. And unlike anybody else that I can think of that they have brought into AEW in the past, I don't know how long, they did beat him a couple times and they did marginalize him a bit, but they started fairly quickly giving him actual wins on television and giving him time to talk. And his promos have been excellent. The delivery, the voice he has, the inflection, he's not only intelligent, but he's articulate and he comes up with good shit. The king of television, and the way that he speaks as a heel with disdain. Plus, he's more motivated. You can tell, one thing you could tell when Joe was motivated, because he moves better and he's himself more in his matches. When he's doing bullshit booking or he's being, misused, you can tell that sometimes he's like, but he's up for this. His work is great because he has that unique style where that big body works for him and he can do all that shit. And he's got the fucking badass demeanor. He's got everything. When in a business that's short of all of those attributes on almost anybody, he's got all of them. But then, as we mentioned, they just started something that would pay dividends if it ran for 3 months, 4 months, 6 months. Guy with both TV titles, the king of television, going out and imposing his fucking will on people and pushing them around and cutting those promos and being a badass. You can see that Samoa Joe, done right, presented in that fashion for an extended, concerted push. You can see Joe versus Moxley being a pay-per-view money match for this company because you could put Moxley in fucking jeopardy with that big badass. Samoa Joe and Bryan Danielson being a pay-per-view money match for that company. I won't even talk about Samoa Joe and CM Punk that drew money for Ring of Honor when nobody hardly even knew it was a thing yet.
You could use the catalog for that one and actually build it up.
You could use the catalog and fucking build that match, but they've screwed that pooch already to begin with. But the point I'm making is you've got a guy here that has the size and the menace and the promo ability and the experience and the working ability to be a main event heel. And you're starting to push him on television. And by the time he's the king of TV for 6 weeks, and he's beaten Wardlow and fucking crippled him with a lead pipe to the knee and then cut his hair off. And then a week later, they beat him with a 150-pound skateboarder. 150-pound, unwell-adjusted socially skateboarder.
But he's tough.
And hold on. That's what they did. And then for the past month, we haven't seen Wardlow, of course. Now we've heard he's had an injury. Well, nobody needed to fucking know that. Steve Austin was hurt for about 6 months one time. General public didn't know because we kept him on TV. But the point is, you didn't have to just re-rack everything. Wardlow got prison raped on an episode of their program by a fucking vicious heel. And 7 days later, a diminutive middle schooler with a fucking maladjusted goddamn social complex kicked his ass and beat him right in the middle of the ring just because it was his hometown. So then that left Wardlow with his dick in his hand, and you derailed the king of television push that, even though now apparently it's being reinstated, you've left a blemish on. That means Samoa Joe did not have an unobstructed trajectory to try to get to the top. He, unfortunately, had the fucking problems that everybody else has had with Tony's bookings, that he can't leave anything alone. And he wanted to give Darby a present, apparently, in his hometown. So now Darby defends the title every week for the last few weeks and then gets a rematch with Samoa Joe. And somewhere I hate to give spoilers, but Joe's going to win the title back here because somehow in Tony's demented mind, he thinks that just erases the last month and the fucking hole in everything and brings us back to where we were before Samoa Joe got beat by an amoeba. So, in this match, by the way, now that I've spoiled the finish, don't worry, there's more to come. The stipulation for the TNT title was it was no holds barred. I don't know what the fuck they could possibly do in this that they didn't do in the match between Page and Plummer in the first two segments of this show. But this one, since that wasn't no holds barred, but have any holes ever been barred from any of their other matches between Joe and Darby? I remember furniture and skateboards and chairs. So Darby comes down the aisleway and takes off his jacket and has a thumbtack hoodie on. A hoodie that is studded like, remember the old fucking TV commercials for the Bedazzler? You could put rhinestones on anything. Well, he's betacked his fucking hoodie. I know that he appeals to a segment of young people, and those young people are usually fucking stupid too. But I try to like Darby, and he drives me away. He's a fucking moron, and people who like that shit are morons. You idiot! You're gonna wear fucking thumbtacks apparel. At least the Road Warrior spikes would only impale other people, not themselves. So immediately he's hammering Joe with the thumbtack jacket on. And Joe uses a towel around his neck to wrap it around his arm and give Darby a clothesline and stop him. That was actually very resourceful. But now Joe is already bleeding from the back and the arms because of the fucking tacks. And hold on, there's more. Joe kicks the shit out of Darby. He pulls out a table 1 minute in. But Darby dives out hits the table and knocks the table into Joe and the cameraman too, and they put a fucking floor cameraman on his ass. And then Joe throws Darby into and over the steel stairs and the railing and out in the arena. They're up the stairs into the general admission seats. Why? The second match tonight, but now they're all the way up and they fight in quotation marks. And I love Samoa Joe, and he's talented. He needs better than this. They fight in quotation marks up the stairs, the concrete stairs, in the general admission seats of the arena. And it's like they're walking up the stairs and swinging at each other, or Joe will chuck Darby a few feet and continue. And finally, at one point, he just picked Darby up and dumped him head first over the little railing onto the concrete stairs. But now Joe, by this point, was bleeding from the head hard way, not something that was planned or he did on purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, as a trained observer, I can testify to this. So now, Samoa Joe is bleeding from at least 3 different places on his body while he's beating the shit out of Darby Allen. It is injuring Samoa Joe to beat up Darby Allen. And they go through the break. And during the break, they actually came back down and got in the ring. And they come back in the ring, and Joe is still beating the shit out of... And that's why I said, my God, he's done nothing but beat the shit out of this guy, and he's the one bleeding from everywhere. And so Joe gets a sleeper... And then Darby Allen just gets up to his feet. He's 145 fucking pounds, and his 300-something pound Samoan is on his back with a fucking sleeper after all this other shit. And he just stands up and backs Joe into the corner, breaks the sleeper, and starts wailing on him. And Joe shuts him down again, and he kicks out again. And did you say... Joe's been doing this for 15 years. The guy runs at him in the corner, and Joe catches him that kind of rock bottom out of the corner, right? So Sockface, and it looks stiff. He delivers it with some force. Sockface on commentary made sure to call that by its Japanese name, the Space Tornado Ogawa, and makes mention that comes from Joe's tours of Japan. Like, yeah, that's where Joe stole it. So he's got a goddamn main event level talent on his own television program right here in the good old United States of America, instead of saying, my God, look at the strength and power of Samoa Joe and the innovative way he just caught Darby Allen in midair and slammed him to the mat with that incredible whiplashing force. It's like, no, he stole that from some Japanese clown that I'm a mark for and that you people have never heard of, and he's a plagiarist. Speaking to the narrowest nerd audience. By the way, Excalibur, from me to you, I haven't said this for a while. You're the fucking shits. So anyway, then Joe pulls out another table and leans it up on the railing halfway out in the audience. So I was waiting for a teeter-totter spot that would take the front row's teeth out. He gets in the ring, and Darby starts a comeback, and Joe just grabs him and beels him over the top rope to the floor. And Darby got his feet under him as he was spinning rapidly, but should have broke both his legs. And then Joe pulls 3 chairs out from under the ring and throws them in and sets them up like he's in shop class in the ring with the spines or the backs of the chairs pointing toward each other. And then he drops Darby Allen spine first on the chair backs. And again, the referee is standing dumbfounded. Yes, it's no holds barred, lazy booking. But Brian, if a wrestling match has been agreed that there's no disqualification, and the referee knows he's not allowed to disqualify anybody, does that mean if one of these guys pulled out from under the ring a shotgun case and pulled a shotgun out and was going to shoot the other guy in the head, that the referee was not allowed to make an effort to take the gun away?
It's my favorite Jesse Ventura argument. Rick Rude vs. Ultimate Warrior, SummerSlam 89. Rude gets hit with the bell by the Warrior, and Jesse Ventura's like, that's a disqualification! Why is the referee disqualifying him? And Shivani says, well, they're on the floor, Jess. And he goes, so? Can he shoot him? Can he get a gun and just shoot him?
But that was it. The referee has to stand there and leave the chairs alone while Joe goes and picks the guy up and does that instead of doing anything so it's just so phony. And then Joe sets the chairs up facing each other, different way this time so he can powerbomb Darby on him. And when he picks Darby up for the powerbomb, Darby Allen throws powder in Joe's eyes and then jumps up and code reds him. You know, that leaping sunset flippy thingy. Because he's 100%, Darby Allen is, less than 30 seconds after a broken spine. And got a 2 count for the code red. And then he gave Joe a flipping stunner, where again, he's been demolished for 20 minutes. Everything possible that's been done, can be done to a human body, has been done to this fucking guy by a guy twice the size of him. And now he's doing flips over the top of Joe and doing a flipping stunner. And then he grabs his tack jacket. And he tries to put the tack jacket back on, but since they're actual tacks, it's all stuck in a fucking wad. It looks like he's trying to put on a fucking large tack-filled wad of chewing gum. So he just has his head stuck through the hole, and he does a coffin drop with the tack jacket on onto Joe right on top of him with all of his fucking weight. 2 count. And then Darby goes, this is where I said, all right, motherfuckers, I'm fucking it. If I didn't think so much of Joe as a professional and a person, I'd be done with Samoa Joe just for not getting up and coming over and just sticking this fucking clown's head up his own ass. After that, Darby Allen, who's been fucking demolished the whole match and had his back broken and his fucking legs nearly broken and goddamn whatever the fuck.
He's so tough.
Samoa Joe, who has taken a code red and a stunner and a coffin drop, has to roll to the floor so he doesn't have to lay in the ring and be embarrassed where everybody can see him. he's got to roll to the floor and stay on the floor out of camera view while Darby Allen goes under the ring and pulls out a box cutter and pulls off the apron skirt and starts cutting the canvas ties. Because that, for the people not familiar, the canvas, the mat over the ring area has fucking grommets in it about every foot, and a rope goes through it, and it is tied, a continuous looping pattern is tied to the fucking bottom of the goddamn ring. That's what keeps the canvas tight. So Darby is going to cut the canvas loose so that he can expose the bare boards of the wrestling ring. You fucking moron. I can't believe anybody walked through this, or they just took his word for it that he could do it. He starts cutting those ties, and he goes all the way down one side of the ring and then back because there's a bunch of them. And then he's got to cut the goddamn another side. And then he's trying to get the canvas up, and then he's pulling the padding out from under the canvas to expose the boards. Brian, do you know how long by actual timing that this took?
I don't know. It felt like it took a very long time. It was a long time that Samoa Joe vanished, and it took forever for Darby to cut all the way around the ring.
1 minute and 40 seconds from the time he started till the time he finished.
And where was Joe?
Rolled out on the floor in plain view of everybody in the building, trying to figure out something to sell, or just hiding there in embarrassment that he had to be a part of this fucking fiasco. And so then, after they'd already had a garbage match to begin with, and it was already ridiculous to begin with, and then they killed the flow of that. So Darby cut the canvas ties, pulled the pads out, turned the canvas back, and then Joe's out on the floor. Now he can stand up because all of this has been done. As he stands up in front of the table that they had leaned up against the railing earlier in the match, Darby runs and dives out head first through the fucking ropes and hangs his goddamn feet on the top rope. Now, Joe was going to do the spot where Joe walked away anyway. Joe likes to walk away from dives because it is a pop that every other stupid dumb fuck stands there. So it was the spot he was going to walk away anyway, but Darby then fucking went. He didn't go into the table. He went beside the table, broke the table with what looked like his legs, and landed upside down head first on the goddamn floor. And at that point, Stacy had come in, and I said, watch this, because we were already a minute into the fucking zip tie cutting. And I said, watch this. And I backed it up for her. And she said, what a waste of fucking time that when she saw this guy spent almost 2 minutes doing nothing but destroying the ring, and then gets in and runs across and dives out and lands on his fucking head for his own clumsiness. She said, you see this in armories, not national television. And they can't get out of this mindset that they have to have this garbage and this fucking foolishness. So anyway, the fucking guy lands on his head on the floor. Then Joe throws him in the ring and hits a power bomb on the fucking tack jacket. And then Darby's up again, wailing away at Joe with a fucking chair. And goes to the top. And Joe catches him and gives him the muscle buster off the top rope onto the ring boards. 1, 2, 3. So now they've put in people's minds that, well, okay, they've got all that padding. And without it, boy, that really must be hard. But at the same time, this big giant Samoan just dropped this fucking little skateboarder head first on this, and he's going to walk next week. We'll see him again, so it can't be too bad. What the fuck are they doing? Now they've Everybody else who takes bumps in a regular ring, oh, well, they got it easy. There's pads on there. But boy, Darby, if only everybody was a diminutive, microscopic, 145-pound, maladjusted skateboarder. Why, they'd be invincible. And then Wardlow hit the ring and speared Joe and started wailing away on him, and Joe rolled out and fucking ran off. So Joe got juice from the head and the body for a guy half his size that's obviously a fucking moron, and took everything that he could do to fucking beat this guy, and to beat him finally had to modify the ring to be able to put this guy down. So why should I ever buy Joe against Moxley or against Danielson or against Punk or against MJF at some point? That could be an incredible promo battle and the chance for people to say, well, shit, of anybody that MJF's ever faced, this motherfucker's as dirty and dastardly as he is. And the people would be behind Joe. But no, because he can't beat a fucking guy from a playground. And Wardlow.
And that's what we're going to get next. More Samoa Joe and Wardlow.
And Wardlow got to run Joe off after Joe had done everything he could to beat a fucking guy half the size of Wardlow. I can't wait to see that match. God damn it. You know what? Hold on here. That's where Tony Khan's head is at. I saw this and I said,
can I tell you what I would do? It's not what you would do, but I would obviously do a lot of things differently here. But I would capture the moment and kind of run with it. And again, the booking in AEW kills everyone eventually. Fuck Wardlow and Samoa Joe. Well, you want them to do something without the belt. Have Joe come out there, drop that TV belt to Mark Briscoe. And let's move on with the TV belt in a different direction. Mark Briscoe, not even mentioned on this show, was the star, obviously, of last week's show. Not a mention of him, nothing here. We always talk about how they don't really do a good job going from week to week. That's just a small example, and that's just a small idea, because I am not digging this.
He was mentioned because several times they did mention the tribute show to JB. He was mentioned, but
why wasn't he on the show?
Why wasn't he mentioned in a Mark Briscoe is All Elite? We have signed this guy. And I agree with your sentiment. I wouldn't put the Ring of Honor TV title on him. I'd make him the Ring of Honor World Champion. And I would do
Who
it
is the ring? That's
quicker
Claudio.
than sooner.
Claudio's the ring. I was actually talking about the AEW TV champion, but Claudio's still the world champion, right?
Here's what I would do is I would bring Mark in, and as part of a multifaceted push for him, I'd make him the Ring of Honor World Champion. Because who else would, if you're going to make anything out of Ring of Honor, and that's yet to be determined, we've heard talk, then who else could carry the standard and the banner for Ring of Honor than the guy that's most synonymous with it, him and in memory of his brother, that were the two guys that were there since day one. And that would at least give Mark something to hang his hat on, and also establish that he's going to be a single and he's not going to be working in other people's shadows anymore. But that might require too much fucking effort.
I did not like this episode of AEW. Do you want to talk about the ratings?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. I understand a bunch of other people didn't like this episode of AEW either. What were the ratings?
The overall number, 901,000.
So down about 100,000 from last week. That also had the incredible pattern. As we said, it was better for them from start to finish because they waited till the end to see the Briscoe tribute, correct? Last week.
That is correct. They stayed all the way to the end, bucking the trend. We'll see what happens this week. Of course, traditionally, the women's match in around 9:30 drives off a lot of people and they don't come back. Let's see what happens. Segment 1. By the way, this is the chart I'm looking at was done by Brandon Thurston at WrestleNomics. Segment 1, 8 to 8:15 p.m. Moxley versus Hangman Page, including picture-in-picture. 1,065,000 viewers.
And they were at 1.2 at a start last week, so that's down as well. And maybe their lead-in was down. So let's see where it goes from here.
Segment 2, which is the last 4 minutes of Moxley versus Page, as well as the post-match angle, and Darby Allen's video, 1,015,000 viewers.
So they kept them only lost 50,000 for that backwards match. That's not bad.
Segment 3, including the Jamie Hayter, Bunny, Saraya, Tony Storm, and Britt Baker backstage angle.
Yeah, that's what I skipped.
And the Acclaimed having a match and then a confrontation with the Gunn family. Also, Jack Perry's live promo and the beginning of Brian Cage versus Takeshita. 995,000 viewers.
Okay, well then they've only lost another 20,000, so they're actually the 70,000 viewers from start to end of quarter 3. That's much better than normal.
Segment 4, maybe the problem with putting people that fans really like, the most hardcore fans, but the other people don't really know yet, on your show. Segment 4, 8:45 to 9 p.m. The continuation of Cage versus Takeshita, including picture-in-picture, as well as the Jericho Appreciation Society promo backstage, and the big angle with the Elite and the Firm. 849,000 viewers.
Oh my God. So that is 146,000 people decided the same thing that I decided, that Brian Cage can't fucking wrestle.
It was Cage versus Takeshita, who, again, AEW fans really like, and I've thought he's really good. But to the average person, they don't know him, and he's wrestling against someone they've proven they don't care about. And then after that, the Jericho Clowns, and then the Elite and the Firm. There's your answer. But let's go to segment 5, 9 to 9:15. Bryan Danielson versus Timothy Thatcher, including picture-in-picture. 853,000 viewers.
Well, they kept what they had and got 4,000 back, but that's... Again, do they have a bigger star than Bryan Danielson that they could put at the top of the 9 o'clock hour to keep people's attention? No, not really.
Well, 9:15 to 9:30.
It's a pity they missed a good match.
Segment 6, 9:15 to 9:30, which is the finish of that match, as well as the angle afterwards with MJF. Oh, I missed this. Dustin Rhodes and Swerve Strickland's video. And then MJF and Roosh, having a backstage angle. And then the beginning of Jade versus Red Velvet.
Oh, boy.
With picture-in-picture. 815,000 viewers.
Ooh. Okay, so all of that fall to Raw lost 38,000 more people.
Segment 7, 9:30 to 9:45 p.m. The final 4 minutes of Cargill versus Red Velvet and the post-match. And then Britt Baker, Jamie Hayter, and Ruby Soho's backstage promo. And the beginning of Darby versus Samoa Joe. 783,000 viewers.
Oh, Christ on a cracker. That's another 32,000 people. So they are now down 280,000 people from the start of the program.
And finally, segment 8, 9:45 to 10 p.m. Darby Allen versus Samoa Joe with picture-in-picture. 830,000 viewers.
So they actually brought another 47,000 back to see. And I was actually going to say maybe it was a better thing for him if nobody saw that match. Better for Joe. Nobody saw him struggle like that to land that fish. But
the 8:30 to 8:45 segment, from that to 8:45 to 9, going from 995,000 viewers to 849,000 viewers. I don't know if there's been a drastic drop like that lately.
It was sharp. And again, they finish up at one point, as I said, they were down 280,000. They finish up at what, 200 and... No, wait a minute. They were almost down, 280,000, and they finish up 200 and... What is that? Goddamn math in my head. 235,000 below where they started. That's 25% almost. So we did this on what was the Drive-Thru is your show, We did it where we talked about the Raw numbers. They lost people in hour 3, especially because it's attrition and fighting sleep at that point, but they still don't lose that big a percentage. They have bigger audience swings because the overall aggregate audience is bigger. But they just can't get people to stick with this program no matter what they put on last, unless it was last week and it's a tribute to somebody that everybody was interested in seeing. So
unless it's something people are actually clamoring to see. With all due respect, did anyone want to see another Samoa Joe Darby Allen match? I was kind of looking forward to this episode because of the Moxley Page thing they've been building up. That match let me down. Danielson versus Thatcher. I didn't like it as much as everyone else. This was the one match we've seen a few times. Darby didn't show himself as TV champion as someone who's going to get people to tune back in at the end of the show. Remember, they tried him at the end of the show for several weeks.
Right.
Got no star power. Whatever you want to say about Moxley, like you and I have said, we don't get it. He at least gets a little bit of a number. Jericho's not pulling any numbers. Danielson's not pulling any numbers. Maybe if you put stars against stars, it'll do something. But for everyone that says Tony should try to do something with CM Punk, here's the biggest argument. Not even that he's still the biggest merch mover or anything else. You need stars, and where are you going to get any?
Somebody needs to hit him in the head so he can see some.